All right, Steph, now that the dust has settled after the trade deadline and we're starting to see some teams solidify their roster, I think it'd be a good idea to have a conversation about who we think the top two teams are from the East and from the West, one from each, who we think are going to be in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Oh, okay.
I'm interested to see your take. Maybe you started off with who your Eastern Conference favorite is.
Eastern Conference. Well, I think my favorite has to come out of the Atlantic just because every single team made a pretty big trade at the deadline. There's solid cases, I think, to be made for all four teams there, to be honest, but I just can't bet against the two-time champs, the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't think it would be wise to bet against them. They, like I said, they added at the deadline, regardless of the prices that they paid. Like Hagel and Nick Paul make their team better. Their third line now is going to be unreal like it was the past 2 years when they won the cup. So I have a tough time betting against them. So I think I have to go Tampa just because they're so deep. They got deeper. Vasilevskiy, I think there was a crazy stat. In all 4 series clinching games last playoffs, he got a shutout.
Wow.
I think he's just unbelievable. And he's super clutch. And their defense is stacked. Their left side is probably the best in the league. Hedman, McDonough, Sergachev. I think they don't have many holes, if any holes. So I have a tough time betting against Tampa. But what are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I'm on the same lines as you. When I think about it, it comes down to either Tampa or Florida to make the Stanley Cup Finals. And the only real place I see these teams differ is in their goaltending. Like, if we look at their top 6, it's extremely similar. There's 3 stars on each team, right? We see Cooch, Point, Stammer, and then Huberdeau, Barkov, and now with the addition of Giroux. Their top 4 defense are very similar as well. Hedman matches pretty well with Ekblad this year, and I think he's going to come back for the finals. And I'm sorry, Uyghur, Forsling, Gudis is just as good as Sergachev, McDonough, Cernak to me.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, when we look back on our experience watching NHL teams in the playoffs, the ones that always seem to flop, even amidst high expectations, are the ones that have goaltending problems in the playoffs. We saw it last year with the Leafs with Freddie Anderson. We saw it all those years with Pekka Rinne in Nashville. And now, you know, I wonder whether we're going to see it with Florida, with Sergey Bobrovsky. If we start to break these numbers down, Sergey Bobrovsky is 13-23 and 0 in 41 games in the playoffs with a goals against of 324 and a save percentage of pretty under 9 in his playoff career. And, you know, a lot of people might say, oh, well, that's because he played on Columbus and those days brought him down. But no, man, last year in the playoffs, in those 3 games that they played, he went 1-2 with a save percentage of 830.
Oh God!
Right,
okay.
so which isn't good. And when we look on the other side, like you said, Andrei Vasilevskiy is the guy that you want in the net in the
100%.
playoffs. Right, really quickly, would you rather have him or Shesterkin in the playoffs this year?
I'd have him over anybody in the league.
100%. He was a Conn Smythe winner last year, I believe, and he might have. Did he accumulate another one in the past Cup run?
I think he won one of those 2.
Yeah,
one for sure.
We know that he won one for sure. In his career in the playoffs, he's 49-29-0 with 81 games played and a goals against average of 2.24, and get this, a save percentage of 924.
Wow.
He seems to be getting better with age. Last year when they won the Cup, his save percentage was 937. Wow. I just have a really tough time betting against a team with such strong goaltending and unbelievable top 6 and an unbelievable top 4 defensively.
Yeah, just talking about Vasilevskiy, I think he's like in his mid to late 20s. But if he were to retire tomorrow, he's probably in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, without a doubt. 2-time Cup champion, Conn Smythe winner. How many Vezinas?
1 or 2 at least. That's a pretty solid resume. That just goes to show how insanely good they are.
You know, and we'll never know whether it was because he was on a fantastic team or whether he was great. But
it's both.
It's both. But you got to think he's also probably the most talented goalie.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
In the league.
Some of the saves that he makes, he's a freak of nature. Like, put him on any team, and he'll probably give him a fighting chance to make the playoffs. Unless you're Arizona, no offense.
I agree. Time to move into the West. Who do you have as your Western Conference winners moving into the Stanley Cup Finals?
I think it's between one of 2 teams. It's either Colorado or the team that I picked, which is Calgary.
Calgary. Okay, let's hear it.
They've been so hot of late. They are running away with the Pacific Division. Granted, the Pacific Division is objectively the worst in the league. So, I mean, but you have to beat the teams there, and they're doing that.
Yep.
I just think they're so well built. I hate to be like cliche about talking about playoffs. Like, I'm not a huge fan of when people like talk about, oh, it's playoffs is a different game. Like, but it is. And this team they're just built so well for that. They're built to be a Daryl Sutter team. There's something to be said about building your roster out to support the coach and their style of play. I think they've done that really well. Even special teams is a real strong point of theirs. In the playoffs, special teams are vital. They're 4th in PK this year and 8th in power play.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado is middle of the pack in the penalty kill, and that's sort of what put it over the top for me, because when you come up against a team like Colorado in the later rounds, they can really hurt you on the power play. But if you have a solid PK, and the guys they traded for, Kalle Yarncroke and Toffoli, they both play PK, so they beefed up an already good penalty kill. I think special teams are going to go a long way in their success. And we talked about it with Tampa, but goaltending, behind Vasilevskiy and maybe Shesterkin this year, they have the second or third best goalie. In my opinion, Jacob Markstrom's had a renaissance. He had a really tough year last year, but this year he's been unbelievable. And I know we're gonna talk a little bit about Colorado. And Colorado might beat them in some other areas, but I think they have them in net. And we just talked about it with Tampa. Having a really strong goalie goes a long way. So I said Calgary, but I think I know where you're heading here.
Yeah, I mean, last episode I did give a hot take at the end, and I said Calgary over Colorado. But, I mean, on a more serious note, it's impossible to take any team over Colorado right now. Quite possibly any team I have ever seen in my life over Colorado right now. This might be the best team I have ever seen on paper. And honestly, in reality, they've also shown it too. They almost have 100 points now. They're like 5 points clear of, I think, Florida in second place. A magnificent top 6 with Rantanen, Makar, Landeskog, Kadri, Nichushkin. Although Landeskog, is he done for the year? Is he coming back?
I think he's out for the regular season, but he's coming back playoffs, at least as far as I know.
I always get confused between fantasy seasons and reality seasons.
Fantasy season, he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone for sure. But as I explained last week, Colorado got better in their biggest weakness, and that was in entry zone defense with John Schmanson. Yeah. And I mean, as Sutter said, any team that plays Colorado in the first in the first series is going to be a waste of 8 days. I really see them steamrolling in the first 2 rounds. And I mean, they probably will play Calgary, like you said. And to your point, in net, Calgary probably has Darcy Kemper B. But
he's
man,
no slouch.
Darcy Kemper has been sneaky underrated his whole career. He's rocking a 2.86 goals against average and .913 save percentage in the playoffs his whole career. And do you remember what teams Darcy Kemper played on when he made the playoffs?
Some really bad teams in Arizona.
And in Minnesota when they were not very good.
Yeah, they were bad back then.
Right? So if Darcy Kemper can keep up with Markstrom, even be a little bit worse, I really have a hard time thinking that Colorado doesn't win this in like 6.
6. You're not even giving Calgary a 7th game.
I mean, unless Darcy Kemper plays like absolute garbage, I don't see Colorado losing more than 2 games. But, one place I will agree with you that Calgary has over Colorado is probably coaching too. And like you said, Calgary has great special teams. It always just seems to be these Sutter teams that are unbelievable.
Something about them.
On the penalty kill and the power play. I remember that LA Dynasty, that power play was unbelievable. Yeah,
I know Sutter's been out of the game for a while and hasn't coached a good team, but this is a good team, and there's something to be said for experience and knowing maybe how to, I guess, I know I hate talking in these cliches, but how to get it done, but he's going to guide this team. I think what both these teams lack, though, is a little bit of playoff experience on their roster, so maybe having that experience on the bench is another component of maybe where Calgary can make a push, but I'm really excited to see these teams. Hopefully, like they beat the teams they're supposed to beat, and we can get a crazy Western Conference Finals with each of them, because I think that's going to be a bloodbath and it'll be really fun to watch.
Yeah, no, I agree. As I'm thinking about it, I know Tyler Toffoli has a couple cups playing for LA.
That's right.
Does anyone on Colorado have they won a cup?
Oh gosh,
Erik Johnson? I don't think so.
I don't think Erik Johnson's won a cup. I think they're 2 relatively inexperienced teams.
It might make for a pretty fun series then.
Yeah, absolutely.